Hello, Gordon here. Hope all is well with you. And this Facebook Live I've called One Small Step, but for who? Because I'm recording this video on July 21st, 2019. And it's 50 years to the day that we set foot on the moon. 50 years. We actually landed on the moon yesterday, July the 20th. But Neil Armstrong took that first step early in the morning today, July the 21st. And as he did so, he said, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Although, who was that small step for? Now you might be saying, well, one small step for man. Well, actually, Neil Armstrong says, he said, it's one small step for a man. One giant leap for mankind. Now, if you listen back to the audio of him saying that, I can't hear him saying, that's one small step for a man. I can't hear him saying that. Tape engineers and audio experts have listened to it and said, well, it could be that he had a slur, so the for and the a have merged together, so you can't really hear the a. Other people have said that the a might have dropped out in static. Other people have said he didn't say for a man, he said for man, whether he meant to say for a man or not. But Neil Armstrong always insisted that he said it's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. And that's why when you see the quote, you will see the a in brackets. Because Neil Armstrong said that's how he wanted it. He wanted the a to be in brackets because it was there, whether you can hear it or not. And he also said that he only thought that up after launch and in the capsule on the way before he stepped out. Now that I'm not sure I believe. Am I calling Neil Armstrong a liar? Well, no, I'm not, because I'm not him. And if he says he thought it up on the way and after launch, well, so be it. But bear in mind that something he took with him was a bit of wood from the propeller of the Wright brothers plane. So he knew, well, obviously he knew the significance of what he was doing. I just find it a bit hard to believe that he would have thought up something which was quite profound and very succinct, very nicely done, just on the fly. Because as an engineer, a cool, calm and collected test pilot, he didn't really do, I'm going to say he didn't do things on the fly. Of course he did do things on the fly, because part of being a test pilot was that you had to react in potentially life or death situations. And even the landing on the moon yesterday was pretty much a life or death situation, because in the last few minutes they were running out of fuel. They lost communications with Houston on a couple of occasions. They overshot the landing site by several miles. So Neil Armstrong had to take over the controls and manually pilot the thing with Buzz Aldrin. Unbelievable. One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. And clearly it was a giant leap for mankind, because it was the first time that we as a species have set foot on another body in the universe other than the Earth. I mean, even 50 years later, we've been to Mars. In fact, we're on Mars at the moment. There's a rover vehicle on Mars at the moment. But we haven't set foot anywhere else. People might have thought 50 years ago, oh yeah, well, in 50 years' time, of course we will have man on Mars, etc. We'll have mankind all over the solar system, all over the universe. Actually, as it happens, 50 years later, we've only ever had 12 men be on the moon, set foot on the moon. Only 12 men have ever done it. But it was a giant leap, so you can see how much of a giant leap that was for mankind. And when Neil Armstrong said it's one small step for a man, he was right, because it was only a small step. In fact, he had difficulty seeing where he was going because of all the equipment, so it was a bit of a leap in the dark. But it was one small step at the end of a very long process. It was back in 1961 that President Kennedy had said, we will land a man on the moon and get him safely back to the Earth before the end of the decade. All that Apollo program, all the learning and failure, the astronaut deaths, the trial and error, all full of one small steps all the way along the way. So Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon was just another small step, but it was the last small step, wasn't it? Every small step added up to that giant leap. So when I say one small step, but for who? Not only is there this difference between one small step for man or one small step for a man, let's think about the small steps for you and for me in whatever goals we want to make. And let's think of giant leaps that we want to make, big transformations that we might want to make, whether that's in health, wealth, career, relationships or lifestyle. The big transformation. People might think, yeah, that's the big transformation I'd like to make, but I can't do it because it's too much of a giant leap. I don't know how to do it. And then think of the moon landing 50 years ago. They just didn't decide in 1961, oh, we're going to get to the moon, and then they suddenly went to the moon. It's full of small steps, isn't it? Learning, trial and error. So whatever your goal might be, think of the end goal, and you have to define the end goal and then work out the big plan, the journey to get there, and then on that journey break it down into steps so that you know what the very next step is. What would be the next small step for you to make that giant leap eventually, to make that giant transformation in whichever area of life it is eventually? What would be the next small step for you to take? And then it's your choice, isn't it? It's your choice whether you take that step or not. Because clearly Neil Armstrong took that step. All the hundreds of thousands of other people and the hundreds of thousands of other small steps in that moon landing journey, people chose to take those steps. So you can choose whether to take the next small step, whatever that is for you. And by the way, even though the big transformation, the giant leap for you might seem a long way off, once you take the small step, particularly the first small step, that is a giant leap. Because it changes everything. It changes the goalposts once you take that first giant leap. Circumstances change around you. Opportunities change around you. Other people's views and reactions change around you. And your views and thoughts of yourself change. And all of that change comes once you take that first small step. And then you think, oh, yeah, that went better than I thought. Or even if you think, oh, yeah, that didn't go as well as I thought, take another one. Take the next small step, the next small step, the next small step, and eventually you'll have the giant leap, won't you? The giant leap of the end destination, as well as the giant leap of each of the small steps. So I hope you like that message. That is the third video I've done this week about the moon landing, and the second video in 2 days about stepping on the moon. And they might be thinking, hang on, he's banging on about this point a bit, isn't he? Well, there's a couple of answers to that. The first answer is to do with my other strand, the online passion profits internet marketing strand, is that when you're doing a Facebook Live, here's a bit of news, not everyone is going to see it. A lot of people hold back from taking action on Facebook or with videos or Facebook Lives because they think, oh, it's got to be perfect because everyone in the world is going to see it and I've only got one chance to get it right. No, they're not. Everybody in the world is not going to see it. And that's the beauty of Facebook Lives. That means that you can make mistakes, you can stumble over your words, you can forget what you're going to say. I mean, ideally, you won't do any of those things, but you can do, because not everyone is going to see every minute of every one of your videos. Don't think that that's the case. It's a huge point that holds people back. And clearly there's no need for it to hold people back, because it's not the case that everyone is going to be glued to every second of your video. That's the first point about me banging on about the moon landing 3 times this week. The second point about why it's okay for me to be banging on about the moon landing 3 times this week is because the point is still valid 3 times a week. Because a lot of what I do waffle on about, self-improvement, goal achievement, wealth creation, they're fundamentals. And I like to use current events as the hook, as the angle to make my points. But the points I make are what I like to think of pillars of message, because they're fundamental. The content works over and over again. It's worked for me for decades whenever I've applied it, honestly, since I was about 18. And I passionately believe in the message. So if the message about the moon landing and the self-improvement, goal achievement, life transformation points, if they work one day when we blasted off 50 years ago, they certainly work on another day when we landed 50 years ago, and they certainly work on a third day when we set foot on the moon 50 years ago. Can you see the point? If you've got a message that you believe in and that has value, don't just put it out there once and think, oh, I can't put it out there again. Of course you can put it out there again. You should be putting it out there again. That also ties into my online passion profit strand, by the way. So there we go. 50 years ago today that Neil Armstrong said, it's one small step for brackets A, close brackets, man, one giant leap for mankind. Hope you enjoy that message. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the small steps for you on the journey towards your giant leap. I'd love to hear your feedbacks. Look forward to seeing your comments. Signing off for now and wishing you, as ever, health and happiness. I'll speak to you again soon.